Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Out and Equal Brazil Town Hall. Hola a todos, todas y todes, y bienvenidos al Brazil Town Hall webinar de Out and Equal. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to start off this webinar in Portuguese, and the rest of the webinar will be carried out in English by my colleagues and myself. So if you are an English-only speaker, just hang in there for a little while longer. Okay. Mi nombre es Erin Uritus, soy gerente senior de iniciativas globais da Outinico e serei su moderadora neste webinar. Muito obrigada por se juntar a nós hoje. Primeiro, gostaria de fazer alguns anúncios técnicos. Lembre-se de que isso é uma chamada de transmissão de áudio das 1h às 2h da tarde, hora de São Paulo. E certifica-se de usar seus alto-falantes no seu computador e aumentar o volume. Se estiver com problemas como áudio, você pode ligar para um dos números de telefone no seu e-mail de confirmação. Se você ou um colega estiver com problemas para fazer o login online no webinar, pode acessar redetoque.com, clique no Join a Meeting e use o código de acesso 6946521. E se você tiver problemas técnicos durante a chamada, use a caixa de bate-papo na tela para enviar suas perguntas e nós as resolveremos o mais rápido possível. Use também essa função de bate-papo para nos enviar suas perguntas relacionadas ao conteúdo em todo o webinar. Não precisa esperar até o final para enviar suas perguntas para as apresentadoras. Pode enviar suas perguntas sempre que pensar nelas. Durante os últimos 15 minutos do webinar, eu facilitarei uma sessão de perguntas e respostas. E por último, mas não menos importante, lembre-se de que este webinar será gravado e disponível após a chamada. Nossas apresentadoras hoje serão Erin Uritus, a CEO da Outinico, Dina Fidaz, diretora-geral e diretora de programas e parcerias, e eu. E como vocês já sabem, como os riscos do coronavírus e a situação global em rápida revolução, tivemos que adiar o Fórum Brasil para o final do ano. Embora isso seja tremendamente decepcionante para nossa equipe e parceiros, sabemos que é do interesse coletivo não arriscar uma reunião tão grande neste momento. Estamos trabalhando agora para identificar uma nova data neste ano. Ainda não temos essa data, mas informaremos a todos quando ela for finalizada. E continuamos super comprometidos com o trabalho e planejamos vários compromissos virtuais ao longo do ano, como este. Ok, vou resumir rapidamente o que vamos falar hoje. Primeiro, vou falar sobre por que esse trabalho é importante para nós e para mim. Erin nos vai contar sobre o Business of Belonging no Brasil e superando esse momento vulnerável da nossa história. Depois, Dina falará sobre nossos programas globais, como mudar a cultura, alguns temas globais e nossos planos e metas para o ano de 2020. E, finalmente, vou facilitar uma sessão de perguntas e respostas usando as perguntas que todos vocês enviam para nós. Antes de começarmos, temos uma pequena pesquisa interativa. Vocês podem clicar nas suas respostas e os resultados serão exibidos na tela. Não? A questão é, você se inscreveu no Fórum Brasil? As respostas são sim, não, mas espero me inscrever, não, mas já participei de outros fóruns no Brasil, da Outinico, e não. Vejo que vocês estão respondendo. Ok, parece que a maioria já está inscrita. É bom. Alguns de vocês estão dizendo que não, mas espero me inscrever. Perfeito. Ótimo. É bom saber quem está participando hoje. Obrigada por responder. Ok. E por último, gostaria de contar um pouquinho sobre por que a inclusão no local de trabalho é importante para mim, como pessoa não binária, e especificamente como minha experiência foi formada por nosso trabalho no Brasil. Aqui estão algumas fotos do último Fórum Brasil. Estou em algumas delas. Bem, como acabo de dizer, eu me identifico como não binária. Isso significa que minha identidade de gênero não se encaixa no sistema binário de homem e mulher. Nunca me senti assim, mas nunca tive palavras ou conceitos para entender quem eu realmente era. No tanto, como dediquei minha vida a trabalhar como ativista e líderes LGBTQ, aprendi rapidamente muito mais sobre identidades não binárias. Conheci muitas pessoas que tinham histórias semelhantes e descobri que tinha uma palavra para me descrever, que era não binária. Então, pela primeira vez, descobri o importante papel que o local de trabalho pode desempenhar. Em meu local de trabalho e meus colegas maravilhosos, eu não teria tantos recursos, conhecimento e apoio. E eu sei que essa situação pode ser uma realidade para tantas pessoas diferentes, não apenas para mim. Lembro que quando comecei meu trabalho na Untitled, foi a primeira vez que viajei para o Brasil. Falo espanhol, mas não sabia português. Como vocês podem ver, ainda não é nada perfeito, mas eu confiei em todos vocês para me ajudar. Não para me ensinar português, não, eu estudei por conta própria para isso, mas sim para me ajudar a me expressar usando português neutro. Pode ser difícil encontrar recursos sobre isso quando se estuda, mas muitas das pessoas com quem trabalho no Brasil já eram especialistas nisso. Então, foram todos vocês, nossos incríveis parceiros no Brasil, que me ajudaram a aprender português não binário, não? E usar palavras como obrigada em vez de obrigado ou obrigada. E também aprendi os pronomes ele e dile, que são pronomes não binários em português, para expressar minha identidade de gênero. Então, pela segunda vez, descobri a importância da inclusão no local de trabalho, e desta vez em outro país, em outro idioma. Então, agradeço muito a todos que estão fazendo um trabalho importante a torno da inclusão transgênero e não binária, e por me fazer sentir muito bem-vinda no Brasil. É isso. Essa é a minha pequena história. E vou mudar para inglês para continuar. Okay, thank you. And next up, I would like to introduce Erin Uritus, the CEO of Out and Equal.
Thank you so much, CV. Your Portuguese just keeps getting better and better. I'm very proud of you. Hello, everybody. Bom dia. Thank you for being with us here today. As I see so many of your names come up on the participant list, I know so many of you personally, and you all are friends but also feel like family. We've been doing this work together for what feels like a good while now, and we're so happy you're with us. So as you know, we wanted to be together in person, but we had to change our plans. All of us in our personal and professional lives are now dealing with COVID-19. And unfortunately, COVID-19 is interrupting plans for a number of Out and Equal in-person events. Historically, we have relied on these events like those with you in Brazil, the Brazil Forum, to learn from each other, to explore what challenges ERGs and D&I experts are facing, and to collaborate with you on developing strategies that work. Well, about a year ago, however, Out and Equal made the strategic choice to supplement our in-person events with a new set of tools and offerings. We knew that events like Summit or the Brazil Forum only happen occasionally, and that we could leverage technology to revolutionize our work for greater impact and reach. So in this period of uncertainty, when all events everywhere are being canceled, this decision feels more important than ever. Technology will make it possible for us to continue our work, to continue supporting workplaces as they build cultures of belonging, and to support LGBTQ employees around the world. So I'm really proud that we are ahead of that curve, and besides a new set of webinars like this one, we've already put investments in place that will help us continue to meet our mission, like the Out and Equal Global Hub, an online global community that centralizes LGBTQ D&I best practices, thought leadership, and community connection in an accessible virtual space. These type of investments make us resilient so that belonging won't be canceled, Out and Equal won't be canceled, the Brazilian queer community will not be canceled, and LGBTQ employees will not be canceled. We are here for you. We are here for you now. And you should know that our commitment extends beyond this crisis. We are committed to innovating with you. We are committed to creative connection. We are committed to you as individuals and continuing to bring you professional development opportunities that will help you thrive. And we are committed to ERG and D&I leaders in your important role as change agents within your companies. We call this the business of belonging, and that's our theme this year, the business of belonging. You already know how important belonging is to a company. You know that when employees can bring our full, authentic selves to work, that it makes a difference in terms of teamwork, in terms of efficiency and quality of the work, in terms of recruiting and retention, and in terms of employees' day-to-day experiences in our organizations. Well, many of you have heard me talk about belonging. In fact, we began talking about moving from diversity to inclusion to workplace cultures of belonging 2 years ago, when it became a key pillar of Out and Equal's new strategic plan. But in case anyone is wondering, belonging is not a warm and soft hug, and it must not rest in what some think is a soft or inactionable concept. Rather, it is a smart, strategic, laser focus on optimal organizational culture. It's a mouthful, so let me say it again. It's that important. Belonging is a smart, strategic, laser focus on optimal organizational culture. We must be grounded in the core principle of belonging, that our potential as individuals is fulfilled only when we realize the interdependence of our connection. Now, in the best of times, sustaining a culture of belonging is hard enough in an office, right? It is an entirely different challenge in the current environment, however. We've been talking about the challenges of remote work for a while, but now that's become a reality like never before. But it's also happening in the midst of a crisis, which makes it all the more complex. I want you to think about 3 factors with regard to the current state that we're in and how it's impacting our workplaces: isolation, fear, and trauma. Isolation. More and more studies are indicating that loneliness and isolation are real problems, leading to a myriad of psychological, social, and economic repercussions. We need to mitigate both the effects of feeling lonely and of being alone. We need to be focused on our health and well-being and be mindful of the effects of isolation on ourselves and our teammates. Fear. In addition to isolation, there's something else going on right now that might seem too obvious to mention: fear. Fear and stress related to financial insecurity, to the insecurity around getting sick, to political and social insecurity, not just for ourselves, but for our friends and family. And even if you're managing your own stress well, your colleagues, your partner, or your family members may not be. We are most likely already beginning to see systems around us in which many people are showing up anxious, angry, or distracted. Trauma. For some of us in the LGBTQ movement, all of this talk about a virus in an epidemic is opening up old wounds. We remember living through another time when the virus being talked about was HIV. We remember how we were treated by the government, by healthcare providers, by employers. We remember being rejected. We remember the fear, and we remember the friends we lost. This memory, it hurts. For some of us, it can be physically painful to think about. But I want you to think about it because good can come of that. And if you're not old enough to have lived through it, I want you to take some time to listen to the stories of those who did. Because there's more in those memories than pain. There is also a muscle. And that muscle can help us through this moment. When people were dying and being shunned again and again, our community came together. Every part of the LGBTQ took action to care for those who were sick, to advocate for approaches that work, to fight the stigma, to stand up for those who needed help. This is muscle memory that our community has. It is muscle memory that we need to flex. And it is a muscle that we can help others all across society figure out how to use. Flexing that muscle means leaning into the fear and discomfort by finding strength through connection and support. Conferences and meetings are being canceled left and right, but our ability to check in on each other, retain optimism and compassion, work hard, none of that has been canceled. We know this is true, that solving global crises requires all of the innovation, creativity, and solidarity a people can muster. We need to collectively reject attempts to make this global pandemic a rallying cry for xenophobia and discrimination. I have been part of D&I efforts in both the private and public sectors during other extremely stressful times, and having weathered the fear and anxiety of the September 11th attack and subsequent wars, the global economic recession, and more, I firmly believe that our efforts to build strong, inclusive workplaces are not nice to have after a crisis passes. To the contrary, this work we are all engaged in is exactly the foundation that workplaces and societies as a whole need to get through these crises. If we are divided, suspicious, or devaluing of our differences, then we will not get out of this in decent shape. We're in the middle of a major stress test of our systems, and we are strong enough and forward-looking enough to know that inclusion and belonging are now needed more than ever. It's up to each of us to choose how we make this mentality real every day. I hope that each of you will choose courage and connection and facing outward. Our future selves will thank us for taking this extraordinary moment to extend friendship, help, and determination all around us. This moment is indeed tough, but we are the LGBTQ movement. We have been through tough times before, whether it was the HIV crisis or more recently, the election here in Brazil of a president who expressed so much hate for us. 2 years ago during that election, I had the privilege of supporting an initiative by business and NGO leaders there in Brazil to make a strong and public statement in support of inclusion and against that hatred. Before that happened, nobody could have imagined the business community coming out this way in Brazil, and yet you did. In the U.S., we've made so much progress towards equal rights, and any day now our Supreme Court will rule on whether existing law means that you can be fired for being gay or transgender. Out and Equal worked with a coalition to bring together 206 major businesses to officially ask the court to rule for LGBTQ rights. Those businesses represent more than 7 million employees a wide variety of industries, and more than $5 trillion in revenue. Things are hard now and may continue to be challenging, but I know and believe we will come through this crisis, and we will do it together. I want to leave you with a recent story that underpins all we stand for, Out and Equal, and us as an LGBTQ community. A good friend of mine, a leader who works for one of the top hotel brands in the world, called me just a few days ago. And I asked him, "How are you doing? I can't imagine what it's like to be in the hospitality industry right now." He said, "Yes, it's horrible. Business is not good, and our stock is rapidly falling. People are extremely stressed, but we are doing what we can." And as I listened to him and thought about all the employees that work for this hotel globally and the possible economic implications for them as a company and him personally, I told him how sorry I was that he, they, and we all are going through this. Well, then you know what he said? He said, "But Erin, that is not why I am calling today. I just took a quick break to call you because my daughter's best friend in high school is a young trans woman, and when they canceled schools and closed the dorms where she was staying, she let my daughter know that she fears going back home to a situation with her family that is not good. We may take her into our home, but what else can I do for her? What resources might I connect her to?" And after I recovered from the shock, I was overwhelmed with his kindness and generosity. Here's a man who has many other concerns, many other pressing and urgent items to attend to, and he takes the time to keep being an ally, showing up and taking care of someone who needs it. It reminds me of when I was in São Paulo last year, and I visited Casa Un there in São Paulo, and saw many of you who, after a long day at work, took the taxi ride to show up and volunteer to help members of the LGBTQ community that needed you. When times get tough, these are the moments I will never forget. But more importantly, I will choose to actively remember you, what we have done together, and what I know we can continue doing for each other. I want you to do the same, to actively remember those moments and how strong we are. Know that we at Out and Equal are here for you, and we'll be continuing to connect us all in ways that support and uplift each other in the next several months and this year. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you, and obrigado.
Thank you so much, Erin. What an incredible, powerful talk and story. This is Dina Fidas speaking. I am the Managing Director and Chief Program and Partnerships Officer here at Out and Equal. My pronouns are she and her, and similar to Erin and CV, as I look across the call-in numbers, I see so many friends and colleagues that I've been able to make in my last year here at Out and Equal. As someone who has spent the better part of 12 and a half years working for global LGBTQ equality, I also believe that we are very much made for this moment. We are a community that frequently, perhaps more than we should have to, we are often called to hold connection, support, even celebration and retaining our sense of humor alongside grief and anxiety. For every legislative or legal advancement, we see an uptick in attacks on our community. It's happened here in the United States as we were on the verge of national marriage equality. We also saw unprecedented attacks on our community in the form of hundreds of state-based bills attempting to undermine our civil rights, from the levels of young transgender people to so-called religious freedom bills. We've also seen in Brazil that, as our dear friend Ananda Puchta successfully argued before the Supreme Court, the now seminal law banning homophobia and transphobia, that in Brazil we also saw a major uptick in violence against the transgender community. And so if I have one thing to say to all of us is I think we know that we're in this for the long game, and we are able to support each other through these challenges and hurdles. and we come out of these challenges much stronger as individuals, as organizations, and as a community. One thing that I've also always been encouraged by being in the movement for so long is our ability to retain our focus on the critical work at hand. And so I wanted to talk to you just briefly today about some of the continued work we're doing across our global programs, how we are pivoting and innovating in the face of the coronavirus pandemic, and the types of common issues that we are hearing across the globe, from Bangalore to Shanghai to Sao Paulo. So first, our work is in fact continuing. To echo Erin, inclusion is not canceled, our momentum is not canceled, and our commitment as Out and Equal is not canceled. As you can probably imagine, as we were gearing up for our 2020 plans in China this January and February, we were all overtaken by the news of this, at the time, rather mysterious pandemic beginning in China. And we very immediately told our colleagues, our partners at Shanghai Pride, don't worry, if you can't make these calls, we can work around your schedule. And the first emails and phone calls we heard back were, no, please, we need these weekly check-ins. Out and Equal is our family, and it's only by connecting with each other, sending virtual hugs, laughing, talking about the exciting future ahead that we're able to retain our optimism. And so the resilience that we've been able to see there is incredible. We did, of course, postpone our intended June China in-person forum, but we are continuing with our regular check-ins and moving some of our programming to virtual roundtables. And so for those of you that are at global companies, or that your company or employer has been involved in our China programming, do reach out. We're very glad to include you in the virtual roundtables that we're planning ahead. As we look at a Q4 in-person event in China, I wanted to share with you some of the exciting topics and news that our partners there are telling us we'll be focusing on. One is the continued need for allyship, the continued need to conduct what we would call reverse mentoring, or oh, I'm hearing that perhaps I should talk a little closer to the mic. I hope that's a bit better. We're hearing that our executives, our leaders, our would-be allies need more foundational education and comfort. The commitment's there, but they're afraid to say the wrong thing. And so we're leaning in on our resources in China to help spur that and support allies. We also know that the broader diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation in China needs to be intersectional. It needs to account for gender. It needs to account for disability. It needs to account for varied ethnic backgrounds in the workplace. And that's not, to borrow Erin's phrase, a nice to have, it's absolutely essential for our relevance. There's also some exciting inklings coming out of China that marriage equality may not be as far on the horizon as some of us may have thought. We are actually seeing mainstream press reporting on the momentum there. And we know that employers will play a pivotal role in supporting the prospect of marriage equality and demonstrating through their inclusive benefits that recognize same-sex couples that this not only makes good sense for the society as a whole, it also makes good business sense. As you all know, we are quickly planning a later date for our in-person event in Brazil, but we're also hard at work at planning an April roundtable to take some of the incredible speakers that we planned for today's event and ensure that the learning and the exchange of best practices can in fact continue. We are also still looking forward to our annual India Forum and are looking to supplement our big in-person event with some additional roundtables in other major cities such as Hyderabad and Chennai. We know that in India right now, many of our partners are capitalizing on a wave of momentum. I think for many people, the excitement and the optimism of a post-Section 377 world, that is the striking down of colonial anti-LGBT regulations pertaining to same-sex relations, that has really spurred momentum. But we also know that in India, the momentum around trans and non-binary equality, the momentum around the visibility of the LGBT community as a whole, even predates the striking down of Section 377. And so we're hard at work with our partners there to continue to develop innovative programming, and we invite all of you to extend these invitations that you receive from us to your colleagues. As I've mentioned, we know that supporting culture change, particularly in the face of adversity, compels us to think creatively. What you see on the screen right now are some examples of ways that we've used our different platforms, social media, blogs, and so forth, to recognize, for example, Trans Visibility Day in Brazil. In another 2 weeks, we will be approaching the International Day of Transgender Visibility. And, you know, it's important to note that in this time of many people having to stay indoors, having to avoid as much physical contact, that trans visibility can show up in other ways. Trans visibility can show up in the pronouns that we announce when we introduce ourselves. Trans and non-binary visibility can show up in how we recognize each other over email or in the signatures of our emails. And so to that end, we are actually hard at work right now on translating our latest resource for employers, allies, and individuals on trans identity, non-binary pronouns, and trans visibility. We're going to continue these dialogues year-round and also recognize that convening is not necessarily limited to in-person. I know for myself, there's no substitute for the hugs and the smiles that we've come to recognize and enjoy in each other, but we can also convene and shore up support for one another using these other platforms, such as the Global Hub, teleconferences, and so forth. I also wanted to note that despite cultural differences, despite different geopolitical trend lines, we are seeing a lot of commonality across Brazil, India, China, and some of our other work in Europe and Latin America. And some of these are holding true and informing where we're going to focus our energy, where we will tap individuals for their life experience to share, and also experts. And so we know that globally, we are hearing that trans and non-binary inclusion is an area where our community needs more support. And so again, to that end, we're hard at work on resources to support you. And these resources should also be considered in part a dialogue. We want you to tell us how well they're working, what else would be helpful to you as you navigate this new reality within your employers. We also know, and I think we know this acutely well in the United States and in Brazil especially right now, that none of us work in a bubble. In other words, the social and political backdrops matter. If you're picking up a newspaper and reading about laws intended to curb a young transgender person's ability to get medical care, or you're reading about your head of state declaring that LGBT people are not welcome tourists in your country, it has an effect. It has an effect on our stress level. It has an effect sometimes on our ability to imagine something different. And hopefully it has that righteous anger effect that I think some of us feel, in which we are unwilling to accept anti-LGBT sentiment as the status quo. And we're going to do everything we can to ensure that we are equipping our allies with the information they need, and we can move forward together and overcome those challenges. We also know that religion and social traditions keep surfacing at work. And it's up to us to help positively shape this conversation and to shape it in a way that doesn't negate or diminish the importance of religion and social traditions that perhaps our colleagues have and hold and bring into the workplace, but rather it calls on us to build more bridges, to describe the ways in which these traditions can show up, the ways in which they can actually be positive. They can be an impetus to find commonality with each other, and then to also help our employers develop some parameters around which certain religious rhetoric or certain traditional values are not appropriate in the workplace. And again, this is something we're hearing in our work in the deep south of the United States, in our work in Brazil and Latin America, in our work in India and the APAC region as a whole. And so again, we're developing some more innovative dialogue and resources here to support our community, as we know that so many of us face these challenges to equality. Lastly, we know that as a community, people are wondering, does my story matter? Does my story as a young non-binary person matter? Does my story as an ally who's just coming to grips with my young teenage daughter coming out to me as a lesbian, how can my story be leveraged or help to catalyze change within my employer? And so we're devoting a lot of resources into this focus of how do you shape your own story? How can you find your own voice and with confidence reach people? Because so many of us have been immersed in the business case for inclusion. We know that employers that are more welcoming of the LGBT plus community fare better when it comes to overall profitability, when it comes to recruitment and retention. But we also know that when a CEO is faced with a decision to speak out or to take a bold move and to ensure that, yes, transgender people will be covered here, it's often that human-to-human, person-to-person story that cuts through the noise and furthers the institution as a whole. And so with that, I know CV is going to talk about some next steps. We are continue to be committed to supporting all of you. We're ramping up our virtual programs and platforms. We very much look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas and also in São Paulo later this year. And I want to also underscore that in the headlines and the notifications to stay home, that none of us are alone. As LGBT plus people, some of us have probably felt utterly alone in navigating challenges. And I'm so thankful that we are living in a moment where we can connect in these ways. We can ensure that we're supported, check in on those friends and colleagues who are not raising the red flags needing help, because sometimes it's that individual who needs the check-in. And together we are constructing the future that we want, and it's a future with the equality that we all deserve. So with that, I think CV will move to the question and answer. I see some popping up already in the chat box, and I'll leave it to you and to Corina Hendren, the latest addition to the Out and Equal family, to field these. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin and Dina, for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom and your expertise with us. And thank you, everyone, for sending in your comments and questions as we've been going through this webinar. So if you have any more, please do feel free to keep on sending them in as we go through this Q&A. And we'll try to answer as many as we can. I'm just going to switch to the slide so you can see our faces. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started by reading out a couple of the comments and questions that you've all sent in. I would like to quickly note a couple of comments. A few of you have sent in your thanks to us by saying that the words were inspiring, and I just want to go ahead and mirror that comment back to you all. We really are inspired by the work that you all do every day in the workplace and outside the workplace, and together is what creates sort of these programs and what makes the forum so special. So thank you all as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the first questions that we have here. Cynthia asks, is there a possibility to have some materials on this information for leaders and how the situation impacts our LGBTQ community, meaning, I think meaning the whole situation around the coronavirus. Also mentions some countries are forced in isolation and mental health is really important. Erin, I think I'll go ahead and call on you first, and then we can all kind of chime in. I know there was a letter that was put out recently, and maybe you have some other thoughts to add here.
Yeah, that's right. And thank you so much for this question. I think that the data is still coming in on this, and Out and Equal wants to play a big part, especially with all of you who are involved with your ERGs and who help lead diversity work at your companies, that we want to be the conduit and place to help centralize some of how LGBT people are being impacted by the virus. So specifically around mental health and wellness, that's something we're very interested in. So please keep in contact, as you always do, with CV and the global team, because we really want to hear from you. For us in the U.S., there was a letter that just 6 days ago we signed along with many others in the U.S. It is U.S. specific, but it was a letter that discussed the disproportionate impact on LGBTQ people. It was mostly physical health related, but there was 100 health and social service and advocacy groups, local and national, and this was really highlighting additional risks that we face and that continue to unfold. So CV, I think if you and the team can post the link to that letter, and then anything else that we might find as it evolves specifically to our community, we can make sure to gather those links and make them available to the community.
Yep, absolutely. We'll definitely do that. Thanks, Erin. All right, going through some of the rest of the questions here. There's a question from Felipe saying, hi, I'm Brazilian. I live in Sao Paulo, and I'd like to join Out and Equal as a volunteer. I'd like to know what is the way to register. Great. We always are in need of volunteers when we're there doing forums and any other sort of roundtable activities. So since your email came through when you registered for this webinar, I would be more than happy to reach out and see if you're interested in volunteering for when we do reschedule the forum or any other sort of smaller roundtable activities. And that goes for anyone else. If anyone else is interested in acting as a volunteer here, you can always email brazilforum@outandequal.org, and that's one word, Brazil Forum with a Z, not an S, at outandequal.org, and we will be in touch that way. So thank you for your willingness to do that. All right, let me keep going here. Leonardo asks, what are some small changes that we can make to the corporate environment to start structuring for an inclusive conversation? Dina, I don't know if you want to take that one and talk about some of the small changes that corporations can start making towards having these more inclusive conversations.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. It's a great one. And I'm also thinking, particularly in this current moment of many of us being virtual, a few things come to mind. First, I would ask myself, does our employer have an LGBT network group? And if it doesn't have an LGBT plus network group, do we have some kind of diversity and inclusion council? If the answer is no to both of those, I would say to volunteer and begin that conversation. We know that for most employers, if there's not an individual or role attached to diversity, equity, and inclusion, then it won't get the adequate conversation, attention, and resources it needs. That would be one step. A second is to connect with people in your own work network. In other words, if you are LGBT yourself and you know that your colleague has a gay son, there may be some bridge building there, an opportunity to have dialogue with that person. See what it's been like and how that affects that colleague's work, how it affects their overall view of difference in the workplace, and begin from the ground up in terms of these individual person-to-person connections. I also think with respect to beginning new processes, so for example, adding your pronouns below your email signature, it can also be helpful to not only add something like that, but to do a bit of education in the process. And so, for example, listing your pronouns, and then I have a colleague actually at Unequal, Madeline Jelpy, who says underneath the signature line, why do I put this? And then a link to a web-based resource explaining the use of pronouns. And so I think also embracing, to the degree that you can, a role of educator can also be quite helpful. But what I'm also thinking is perhaps after this call, CV and our fabulous Brazil committee and our team can develop a quick 5 or 10 steps that you can take now to promote inclusion within your Brazilian workplace.
Dina, this is Erin.
Yes.
If I can jump in, CV, before you move on, I want to add on to what Dina said and specifically reference a question that came in that said some people accuse us of using our personal stories to victimize ourselves in an attempt to discredit us by our D&I actions. How to deal with this type of comment? First of all, thank you for writing that, and I want to use that to add on to what Dina said about the power of stories. I think everything Dina said is really good, and these are concrete best practice actions that I think we all know these in our head, and it's really worth doing a check to say, is there anything more we could be doing that we're not doing? But I want to bring it back to this idea of stories. First of all, if people are accusing us of perhaps using stories to victimize ourselves or to paint our community in a certain way, I would say to strongly encourage you to not let them do that. Stories are going to be what cuts through a lot of data doesn't reach people's hearts all the time. I think the business case for inclusion has been out there, and we need to keep making it. But especially in these times when companies need to keep going with their diversity and inclusion work and not go backwards, and especially in times like these where we are going to be isolated and social distancing for a while, and perhaps working from home and away from our colleagues, I would encourage you to find ways, whether it's a Facebook group, which somebody else just wrote in, I love that, Facebook group, or engaging with us in different mechanisms that may be global, where we can have conversations to really keep supporting each other and asking each other about our stories and being courageous in offering our stories, because these are the things that are really going to help build empathy and cut across the different intersections of diversity that we represent. So I always encourage people to even think of the simple question, what is it like to be you? Not just how are you doing, but how are you doing as the person that you are? And keep it simple, but keep connecting, and don't let people shut down your desire to share stories.
Yeah, absolutely. couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Erin, for addressing that specific question, and thank you, Dina, as well, for letting us all know the relatively, not necessarily easy, but some of the smaller steps that we can begin to take to create more inclusive workplaces. That both has been really helpful. Okay, going to move on to as many more questions as we can. And those that we can't answer, we will try to answer in a blog post, just so you know. Let's see, someone says I'm coming through choppy. Hopefully this is better. So we got some comments in from Pri Bertucci saying that they felt represented when we talked about being non-binaire. I just want to reflect that and say I feel represented when you talk about it as well. So thank you for all your pioneering in that work. Pri also mentions what other online tools will be coming up from Out and Equal, and any instances of support that we can provide. I think I'm breaking up a little bit, so I'm going to work on fixing my connection. And while I fix that, Dina, would you mind mentioning maybe any other online tools that we have coming up?
Yeah, thank you, CV. So as Erin has mentioned, we are hard at work to launch our global hub. I'm hearing in the question, though, some more immediate online tools. And so for that, we're developing some faster resources to get into your hands in Brazil in Portuguese, particularly focused on trans and non-binary inclusion. And so we're looking at translating the resource that we have online right now. It is live and in English, and we're very happy to share that after this call. I see that might be a real focal area. And we're also multiplying our upcoming months of online trainings, webinars with guest experts, and virtual roundtables. And so look out very soon for additional announcements there. We're working with our incredible colleague who heads up our learning and development team. So we will be enhancing all of those, but if you do have specific questions, or if you're reviewing your own employer's online offerings right now, we as the team are happy to make ourselves available to work with you on any specific questions you have.
Thank you so much, Dina, for taking that as I fixed my connection. Hopefully I sound a little bit better now. So we're almost at time, but I think we can quickly get to one more question. And as I mentioned, those that have not been answered, we'll go ahead and create a blog post that we can get the rest of them answered, and we'll send you that link when it's up. Okay, so I think as one kind of closing question that we have here could be, let's take a look. What about what activities can be developed to develop empathy and compassion in the workplace? You know, I think I would encourage you to stay in conversation with us, to try to attend the forums, because we invite in a lot of our partners in Brazil that deliver really interesting and really innovative workshops on developing empathy and compassion and fostering allyship in the workplace. So I think those spaces are a really great place to learn about that, to gather new ideas, and to network with fellow colleagues in Sao Paulo and in Brazil. And what we can do with that question is I can include that in the blog post, and we can create a little bit more tailored response in the blog post to that, and suggest some specific activities around developing empathy and compassion in the workplace. So thank you for that question,
and
Claudia.
Phoebe, this is Erin. Sorry, Phoebe,
Erin.
This is Erin. I was just going to jump in and tell everybody we are, as you can imagine, we're rapidly, as you all are, trying to adjust to the new reality. And in just the last few days, we spent a lot of time, as Dina and CV said, we're trying to take a look at kind of what we do in these events in person, and how we serve people both from a professional development, leadership development perspective, but also in the dialogues and conversations of the groups within LGBTQ, so identity groups. So as Dina said, there's lots that we're going to be thinking about and trying to bring in a virtual way for now, and all leading up to, hopefully we'll all see, many of you at Summit in person in Vegas. But I think we're taking a look at how some of the tools that we've already developed that are toolkits might have additional video components, or where we bring you as ERG leaders some like toolkits and presentations that you can modify for yourselves and then use within your companies, to whether it's virtual or once we all begin working together again in person, that you can come forward with some continued strong programming from the ERG perspective. So we'll be lots more to announce, and really looking forward to your ideas. If after this webinar, as CV mentioned, if you've got some ideas for things that Out and Equal can focus on and prioritize to help you as individuals or leaders of your ERG, people doing D&I work, we are happy to take these suggestions, and we'll put it into the mix as we plan the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do feel free to send in those ideas to that Brazil Forum email that I mentioned. I'll include that email in the follow-up email to this webinar, but again, it's brazilforum@outandequal.org. And we can take the conversations from there and see, as Erin mentions, how we can incorporate these ideas virtually. So we're pretty much at the end of this webinar. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm not sure, Erin, Dina, if you wanted to just say a couple of words as a final observation, and then we can go ahead and close out.
Dina, do you want to go first?
Oh, sure. I would just say truly a heartfelt thank you to all of you. Last week at this time, when we were grappling with the onslaught of news and whether or not we could proceed with Brazil Forum, it was hard. And to know that we have each other's backs in this, that we're supporting each other, it's just made all the difference. And so I'm so grateful to our amazing community in Brazil. I also see a few other of our LATAM dial-ins. Big hugs to all of you, and thank you. Thank you for providing the optimism and the inspiration for our work continuing.
This is Erin. I just want to echo what Dina said. This was really hard. We were so close to being able to be with you in person. We also take the health and wellness of all of you and our staff really, really seriously. And we're all, if there's any solace in this, it's that we're all in the same boat, as we say. So I think if we can just commit to being there for each other, rolling up our sleeves and helping each other figure these things out, I'm really excited that Out and Equal will take a strong leadership role in helping convene all of you and all of the community around the world in really creative ways. We are not going backwards, and we're not going to slow down. If anything, we're redoubling our efforts to figure out how to reach everybody with where you are globally in Brazil and as LGBTQ people around the world. We're going to figure this out together, and we are always going to be here for you. So thank you all for joining us. I'm really honored to be able to address you on this call as well, and I really want to thank the Out and Equal team, CV, Dina, everybody on Out and Equal that's helped make this event happen so quickly. And we really look forward to seeing you all again in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Erin. Quickly, I'll just 100% echo that. If anything, this has really shown us how resilient our community is. We've gotten so many messages of support saying that, understanding the need to postpone the in-person activity, and just a pouring in of support on the innovative ways that we can continue to connect virtually and support each other that way. So we're really grateful to have you all as partners. And with that, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank you so very much for taking the time today to call in and to participate, to send us your questions and comments. As I mentioned, we'll take these and make sure that each and every one gets answered through a blog post, which we'll send out to you. And as you leave the call today, you'll be directed to a brief survey. Please go ahead and it's just a couple of questions. Just fill that out. Let us know how we're doing. Suggest new ideas that you'd want to hear from us, and specifically any topics that you'd want to see us address virtually throughout this year. So thank you all very much. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.